Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Are you one of those people who really fancies an Audi A4 estate, but you need four-wheel drive, and you need it to be jacked up 6 inches, and you really like flared wheel arches? Well, aren't you in luck? Because today, I'm in just that. It's this 2012 Audi A4 Allroad. It's basically a regular A4 estate that's rolled its sleeves up and wants to get stuck into some manual labour. You'll have probably heard the name Allroad before. Audi launched the original A6 Allroad more than 2 decades ago, but it's probably best we forget about that car, because it was a bit of a lemon. I've had a few of those over the years and they have been nothing but trouble. I had a green one once, with a green leather interior and green dash. It was a bit like being sat inside Kermit the Frog. And it was about as reliable as UK public transport. I mean, the idea was right, but the reality just wasn't. Having driven this A4 Allroad for a few days now, I feel like they've got it just right. You see, the original A6 Allroad was just too complicated. They gave it air suspension so you could adjust the ride height, which in theory is great. Or at least it's great whilst it's still under warranty. But as anyone with a used Land Rover will be able to tell you, sometimes it just doesn't want to play ball. Some mornings you'll walk out to your car and for no reason at all, it'll be sitting lower than a snake's belly. And then you'll have to sell a kidney from your least favourite child to pay for it. It all just gets very tiresome. But you see, the A4 Allroad doesn't have air suspension. It runs on traditional coils, so there's far less to go wrong. They've raised the ride height on the A4 Allroad about 18 centimetres, and because it sits on traditional coil springs rather than air, you just know that you'll walk out to it every morning and it'll still work. You won't have any times where it feels a bit French and refuses to do any work. And because it has Audi's famous Quattro 4-wheel drive system, you know in the winter it'll take you all the way to the top of that steep hill in your village and back down again safely. And to top it all off, it has extended wheel arches, just, well, to look cool basically. Like I said at the start, it looks like a regular A4 that's rolled up its sleeves and been to the gym. I think it's a good looking car. It retains all that subtlety that Audi buyers like, but it just looks a bit more rugged, a bit more go anywhere. And in a good colour like monsoon grey metallic, I think it looks classy. Moving inside, it's all just standard Audi. There's not an awful lot to say. Everything kind of just makes sense. Well, that's apart from the climate control, which is needlessly fussy, but everything else is fairly straightforward. The controls for the stereo in this generation of Audi are the easiest in all cars that I've found. I love that Audi thought of putting the little volume control down here, which is the best place for it. No other manufacturers do that, just Audi. Sitting behind the wheel, you really can't tell that they've raised up the car about 7 inches. It just feels like a regular A4 Avant. The steering feels good, the visibility is good, it rides quite nicely. This one doesn't have a leather interior, so it's perfect if you're a veganist. You get a nice comfortable armrest, 2 cup holders, plenty of storage compartments, decent sized door bins, a good sized glove compartment, a nice panoramic sunroof. Like most Audis, it's just a very pleasant place to be. Up front there's plenty of space, plenty of leg room, plenty of headroom, plenty of elbow room. In the rear there's just enough space. It isn't tight, but it's not exactly roomy. Unlike the boot, which is roomy, that is, it offers 490 litres of space. It's also predictably safe, scoring top marks at NCAP. You've got ISOFIX points, airbags everywhere. It'd make a good family car, this. In fact, I've got a mate that's just bought an Audi A6 Avant of a similar age for that exact reason. They're a great family car. Under the bonnet there were a few options to choose from, but not that anybody really cared because most people went for this 2-litre turbo diesel, like the one I'm in today. This isn't one of those cars that whenever I drive I think, wow, that's really quick, but it's adequate. It does a really decent job in the real world. There's enough oomph for overtaking, but not so much that you're going to be crucified when you come to fuel it up or insure it. This 2-litre turbo diesel is good for around 45 miles per gallon combined, but it'll still do 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds. Personally, I'd go for the 3-litre turbo diesel V6, but that's just because I'm a bit greedy and I love a big engine. That 3-litre diesel is a powerhouse. It's smooth, quick, quiet, it's a really good all-rounder, and it'll still do about 40 miles per gallon combined. If you want a petrol, they do a 2-litre 4-cylinder, which was the same motor that they used in the Golf GTI, and they're okay until they reach a certain age, and then they get such a thirst for oil, you'd think it were a Getty. You might be pleased to learn that the A4 Allroad can tow up to 1900 kilograms. I did say might, there was no guarantee. It's all just quite pleasant to use, as most Audis are. I can tell you it feels most at home on the motorway though. I did about an hour in it this morning, sat on the motorway at the speed limit, ish. and I was doing about 2,000 revs. It was quiet, smooth, refined. You could do a lot of miles in this. Even out here on these country roads, it doesn't feel like you're driving something on stilts. It feels very planted. Those extra inches don't really make much difference. I could make a joke there, but that would be quite predictable, wouldn't it? A puerile. The model I'm in today is an automatic, which is fine, but if you don't fancy an auto, they do a manual, and that's fine too. However, both are quite costly to fix when they start to go wrong. The manual has a dual mass flywheel, so when you replace the clutch, you've got to replace that flywheel as well, which means the whole job will set you back around £1,000. The automatic gearbox needs servicing, which hardly anybody ever does, which causes it to break, and then you'll get a bill for about £1,500 for a rebuild. And whilst my glass is half empty, the 2-litre diesels have a cam belt which needs to be replaced every 100,000 miles. The 3-litre turbo diesels have a timing chain, which, if it starts to rattle when you start it up, will need replacing, and that'll set you back around £2,000 because it's an engine out job. It's not uncommon to have turbo issues, injector issues, EGR issues, just standard car stuff really. And on the whole, Audi parts are quite expensive. My mate just put a new window regulator on his A6 and it cost 140 quid. But all in all, they always feel like they've been screwed together well. They feel like they'd make solid, dependable workhorses. The A4 Allroad particularly, because it just feels a bit more utilitarian. This generation of Allroad was available from 2009 until 2015, and it's obviously based on the B8 model. In 2011 it had a facelift, and in 2016 it was replaced altogether with the B9. Here in the UK, used prices start at around £6,000, but that's going to get you an early high mileage example. You'll have to spend around £10,000 to get yourself a half decent example. Make sure it's had its cam belt done, and if you go for an automatic, make sure it's had its gearbox serviced. I know I'm generalising, but most owners of these kinds of cars do look after them quite well. Allroad owners generally fall into my Skoda Yeti category. Also, you need to make sure it's had its Haldex system serviced. Anything with four-wheel drive like this, when you go around a corner or if you do a figure of 8 in a car park, you'll be able to feel it kind of grabbing or snatching. So that Haldex system needs servicing, otherwise it'll just get worse and then break. Well, I think that's about it. There's something very Henley-on-Thames about the Allroad. You won't be surprised to hear that Alex Polizzi drives one. So does Davina McCall. So does Prince Charles, actually. It's a posh four-wheel drive car that you can drive comfortably, knowing that mentalists won't key it or let all your tyres down. How clever's that? Right, I'll see you next time. Cheers guys. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know below and I'll do my best to get back to you. So yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.